Jack Bogle, the man who proved you don't have to beat the market. Part 1. What if I told you that one of the greatest investors in history believed you should stop trying to outperform the stock market? That sounds almost absurd. Every day we're surrounded by headlines telling us which stock will be the next big winner, which company could double, which trade you absolutely cannot miss. We're taught that successful investing means finding something other people haven't discovered yet. Finding the next Apple, the next Amazon, the next Nvidia, the next life-changing opportunity. But one quiet man challenged that entire way of thinking. He didn't promise secret strategies. He didn't sell complicated formulas. He didn't claim he could predict tomorrow's market. Instead, he offered an idea so simple that many people dismissed it without ever understanding its true power. What if your greatest advantage isn't finding the next winning stock, but refusing to play that game altogether? What if trying to beat millions of investors around the world is actually making your financial future harder instead of easier? This wasn't the philosophy of someone who failed. It came from a man who transformed investing forever. His name was John Clifton Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, the creator of the first index mutual fund available to everyday investors. A man who quietly saved ordinary families billions of dollars, not by helping them trade more, but by helping them trade less. His greatest lesson wasn't about predicting the future. It was about accepting a simple truth that most investors spend their entire lives trying to avoid. You don't have to be smarter than everyone else. You don't have to discover hidden stocks. You don't have to chase every exciting opportunity. Sometimes the wisest decision is the one that feels almost too ordinary to be remarkable. Because over decades, ordinary discipline can produce extraordinary results. Today, we'll explore the life and philosophy of Jack Bogle, the man who challenged Wall Street, who believed that costs matter more than excitement, that patience beats prediction, and that the greatest investment strategy is often the one that requires the least action. But before we begin, if you enjoy timeless documentaries about legendary investors, visionary entrepreneurs, and the life lessons behind lasting success, consider subscribing to the channel. Every documentary in this series is designed to help you think more clearly, not only about investing, but about life itself. Now, let's begin where one of investing's greatest revolutions quietly started. Chapter 1. An Ordinary Beginning. Jack Bogle was not born into extraordinary wealth. Like many families during the Great Depression, his family experienced severe financial hardship. The comfortable life they once knew disappeared. Those early experiences left a lasting impression. Money could disappear. Fortunes could change. Security could never be taken for granted. Instead of becoming bitter, young Jack became curious. He wanted to understand why financial systems worked the way they did. He believed there had to be better ways for ordinary people to build lasting financial security. That question would eventually change millions of lives around the world. But at the time, he was simply a hard-working student with an unusually disciplined mind. While others chased shortcuts, Jack pursued understanding. While others dreamed of getting rich quickly, he became fascinated with building wealth slowly. That difference may seem small, but it would eventually reshape the entire investment industry. Jack Bogle, the man who proved you don't have to beat the market. Part 2. Chapter 2. The Cost Nobody Notices. Imagine two investors. Both earn exactly the same return from the stock market. Both invest the same amount of money. Both remain invested for 30 years. Yet when they retire, one has hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the other. How is that possible? The answer isn't a secret stock. It isn't better timing. It isn't superior intelligence. It's cost. Jack Bogle believed one of the greatest hidden enemies of wealth wasn't market crashes. It was the quiet, almost invisible expense that slowly drains returns year after year. Investment fees, trading costs, taxes created by unnecessary buying and selling. Individually, these costs seem small, almost insignificant. 1%, 0.5%, a commission here, a management fee there. Most people barely notice them. But investing is a game of compounding, and compounding works both ways. Your gains compound, but so do your costs. Every dollar paid in unnecessary fees is no longer working for you. It cannot grow. It cannot earn future returns. It quietly disappears forever. Jack Bogle often reminded investors that while nobody can control tomorrow's market, everyone can control what they pay to invest. That simple realization became one of the foundations of his philosophy. Chapter 3. The Genius of Simplicity. Human beings often believe that complicated solutions must be better. We assume that if something sounds sophisticated, it must also be more effective. Wall Street understood this psychology well. New funds, new strategies, new products. Every year seemed to bring another exciting opportunity that promised to outperform everything that came before it. Jack Bogle asked a simple question. If the market already reflects the knowledge of millions of investors, why spend so much money trying to outsmart all of them? His answer surprised almost everyone. Instead of constantly trying to find the winners, own them all. That idea eventually became the index fund. Rather than guessing which companies would succeed, the fund simply owned the market itself. The biggest companies, the growing companies, the struggling companies, the future winners, and the future disappointments. Together, many critics laughed. Some called the idea un-American. Others argued that nobody would willingly settle for average. But Bogle understood something deeper. The average return of the market becomes surprisingly powerful when you stop subtracting large fees, excessive trading, and emotional mistakes. Sometimes average quietly becomes extraordinary. Chapter 4. The Tyranny of Excitement. Jack Bogle noticed something about investors that had very little to do with numbers. People love excitement. They love action, buying, selling, checking prices, watching financial news, refreshing charts every few minutes. It feels productive. It feels intelligent. It feels like progress. But often, it's simply activity. Bogle believed activity and progress were not the same thing. The stock market gives us endless opportunities to do something. The challenge is recognizing when doing nothing is actually the wiser decision. That idea sounds easy. In reality, it is one of the hardest disciplines an investor can develop, because standing still rarely feels heroic. Buying another stock feels exciting. Holding quietly for years does not. Yet history repeatedly shows that patient investors often outperform those constantly chasing the next opportunity. The greatest advantage is sometimes not making a brilliant decision. It's avoiding unnecessary mistakes. Chapter 5. Time becomes your business partner. Most people think about investing 1 year at a time, sometimes 1 month, sometimes 1 week. Jack Bogle thought differently. He thought in decades. Time was never simply something that passed. Time was an investment partner. Every additional year allowed compounding to work a little harder. Every unnecessary interruption weakened that partnership. Imagine planting an oak tree. You would never dig it up every month just to see if the roots were growing. You would water it, protect it, allow nature to do its work. Investing is remarkably similar. The strongest portfolios are often the ones disturbed the least. Patience allows growth to become almost invisible. Then one day, after years of quiet compounding, people call the result extraordinary. But there was no secret, only discipline, only consistency, only time. Chapter 6. The market is bigger than any one person. Jack Bogle respected markets, not because they were perfect, but because they represented the combined knowledge, hopes, fears, and decisions of millions of people. Every trading day, millions of buyers and sellers participate. Professional investors, business owners, economists, engineers, teachers, doctors, retirees, students. Each brings different information, different experiences, different expectations. Together, they create one of the most remarkable systems ever built. Could one person occasionally outperform that system? Certainly. Could someone do it year after year, decade after decade, after fees and taxes, consistently? Bogle believed very few could, and even fewer could identify those rare managers before they became successful. Rather than betting on finding the exceptional few, He believed ordinary investors should simply own the market itself. In doing so, they participate in the long-term growth of businesses, innovation, and the economy without needing to predict which individual company will become tomorrow's champion. That quiet confidence became one of the most revolutionary ideas in modern investing. Not because it promised extraordinary excitement, but because it offered ordinary people something even more valuable: a realistic path toward lasting financial freedom. Why is trying to beat the market so difficult? If that's true, then what should ordinary people do instead? Now, I'm glad we're continuing with Jack Bogle. I think this documentary will become one of the most practical series because almost every viewer, whether they're a beginner or experienced investor, can apply something from it. One thing I want to emphasize is that Bogle wasn't telling people not to learn about investing. He was saying that for most people, the pursuit of constantly outperforming the market often costs more than it delivers. That nuance makes his philosophy much richer. Let's continue. Jack Bogle, the man who proved you don't have to beat the market. Part 3, Chapter 7, The Investor's Greatest Opponent. When people first enter the stock market, they often believe they are competing against other investors. They imagine a contest between buyers and sellers, between bulls and bears, between professionals and beginners. Jack Bogle saw the situation differently. He believed the greatest opponent was often staring back from the mirror. Our emotions, our impatience, our fear, our greed. These invisible forces quietly influence decisions every single day. We buy because everyone else seems excited. We sell because everyone else seems afraid. We convince ourselves that this time will be different. And before we realize it, emotion has replaced discipline. Bogle understood that successful investing was less about defeating the market and more about mastering ourselves. The market does not ask whether we feel confident. It simply rewards patience and punishes unnecessary mistakes. The investor who learns emotional discipline has already won half the battle. Chapter 8, The Illusion of Constant Action. Modern life encourages constant activity. Our phones vibrate. Breaking news appears every hour. Financial television discusses every market movement as though history is changing by the minute. It creates the impression that successful investors must always be doing something: buying, selling, adjusting, reacting. Jack Bogle challenged that assumption. He believed that one of the most profitable decisions an investor can make is choosing not to react. Markets naturally fluctuate. Some days they rise sharply. Other days they fall without warning. Most of these movements mean very little to a long-term investor. Yet countless people exhaust themselves trying to respond to every twist and turn. Bogle often reminded investors that the stock market is a wonderful mechanism for creating wealth, but only for those willing to give it time. Those who constantly interrupt the process rarely experience the full power of compounding. Sometimes the hardest decision is also the wisest. Simply leave your investments alone. Chapter 9, The Miracle Hidden Inside Compounding. Albert Einstein is often credited with calling compound interest one of the greatest forces in the world. Whether or not he actually said those exact words, the principle remains extraordinary. Jack Bogle built his philosophy around that quiet mathematical truth. Compounding does not create dramatic results overnight. It works slowly, almost invisibly. During the first few years, progress can seem disappointing. The numbers move, but not dramatically. Many people become discouraged during this stage. They abandon the process before compounding has time to reveal its true power. But eventually something remarkable happens. Growth begins producing more growth. Returns begin earning additional returns. Time starts working harder than effort. The investor suddenly realizes that the greatest contributor to wealth was never a brilliant stock pick. It was staying invested long enough for compounding to do what it has always done. Patient money grows. Restless money constantly starts over. Chapter 10, Ignore the Noise. Every year, the financial world produces thousands of predictions. Experts forecast recessions. Others predict record-breaking rallies. Some warn of disaster. Others promise unlimited opportunity. Jack Bogle observed these predictions with quiet skepticism. He understood something remarkably simple. Nobody consistently knows what tomorrow will bring. Even experts disagree with one another. Instead of trying to predict every twist in the economy, Bogle encouraged investors to focus on the few things they could actually control: saving consistently, investing regularly, keeping costs low, remaining diversified, maintaining discipline. These may not sound exciting, but unlike predictions, they are entirely within our control. The future will always remain uncertain. Our habits do not have to be. Chapter 11. The Extraordinary Power of Ordinary People. Perhaps Jack Bogle's greatest contribution was not creating an investment product. It was changing who investing could serve. Before his ideas gained acceptance, many people believed successful investing belonged primarily to professionals, to experts, to large institutions, to people with specialized knowledge. Bogle believed ordinary families deserve the same opportunity to build wealth. Teachers, factory workers, nurses, small business owners, office employees, retirees, young people just beginning their careers. His mission was never to create the wealthiest investors. His mission was to give millions of ordinary people a fair chance. And by reducing costs, simplifying investing, and encouraging patience, he did exactly that. Sometimes the greatest innovations are not those that benefit the few. They're the ones that quietly improve the lives of millions. That is the legacy Jack Bogle left behind. Not a complicated formula, not an impossible promise, but a simple path that ordinary people could actually follow. You don't have to win every year. You don't have to find the next great stock. You don't have to be the smartest person in the market. Sometimes, building lasting wealth is simply the result of making fewer mistakes, paying lower costs, and allowing time to do what no investor can do alone. I think this is where we move from explaining what Jack Bogle believed to why those beliefs matter, not just for investing, but for life. One thing I admire about Bogle is that he wasn't trying to impress people with complexity. He spent much of his career trying to remove unnecessary complexity. That is surprisingly rare. Jack Bogle, the man who proved you don't have to beat the market. Part 4. Chapter 12. The difference between investing and speculating. Jack Bogle often observed that many people entered the stock market with the wrong expectations. They weren't investing. They were speculating. The difference is subtle, yet profound. A speculator asks, "What will this stock do next week?" An investor asks, "What will this business become over the next 20 years?" One is focused on prediction. The other is focused on ownership. Speculation depends on being right before everyone else. Investing depends on patience. Neither approach guarantees success. But Bogle believed most people dramatically overestimated their ability to predict short-term market movements. The future is uncertain. Markets react to countless events that no individual can fully anticipate. Trying to forecast every movement often creates more stress than reward. True investing accepts uncertainty. It does not demand certainty before taking action. Instead, it builds confidence through diversification, discipline, and time. Chapter 13. The market is a reflection of human nature. Markets are often described as machines. Charts, numbers, prices, volumes, indexes. But beneath every number is a human decision. Someone bought, someone sold, someone became hopeful, someone became afraid. Jack Bogle understood that markets are ultimately driven by people, and people are emotional. Optimism can become euphoria. Caution can become panic. Confidence can become overconfidence. These emotional cycles have repeated throughout history. Technology changes. Companies change. The world changes. Human nature changes very little. That is why discipline remains timeless. The investor who understands human behavior gains an advantage that no new technology can replace. Because while markets evolve, human emotions continue to follow familiar patterns. Chapter 14. Simplicity requires confidence. Many people assume simple means easy. Jack Bogle knew better. Simple often requires tremendous confidence. Imagine owning a broadly diversified portfolio. The market falls 20%. The headlines predict disaster. Friends begin selling. Television experts warn of worse days ahead. Doing nothing during those moments is not easy. It requires conviction. It requires trust. It requires believing in principles instead of emotions. Complicated strategies often create the illusion of control. Simple strategies demand genuine patience. That is why simplicity is difficult. Not because the strategy is hard to understand, but because it is hard to follow when emotions become intense. Chapter 15. Build wealth quietly. Society celebrates dramatic success. The overnight millionaire. The perfect stock pick. The incredible comeback story. These stories are inspiring, but they are also rare. Jack Bogle believed that lasting wealth is usually built quietly. One paycheck invested, 1 month at a time, 1 year after another. No headlines, no excitement, no dramatic predictions, just consistency. Most fortunes are not built through one spectacular decision. They are built through thousands of ordinary decisions made with discipline. Save regularly. Invest consistently. Avoid unnecessary costs. Remain patient. Repeat. These habits rarely attract attention, yet over decades, they become extraordinary. Chapter 16. The Legacy of Jack Bogle. When historians write about great investors, many are remembered for the fortunes they accumulated. Jack Bogle deserves recognition for something different. He changed the investment industry itself. Before his ideas gained widespread acceptance, investing often favored large institutions and wealthy clients. Costs were higher. Choices were fewer. Ordinary investors had limited access to low-cost, diversified investing. Bogle challenged that system. He believed the investment industry should serve investors, not the other way around. His work helped millions of people keep more of their own returns, not through secret knowledge, but by reducing unnecessary expenses. It was a quiet revolution, one that continues to influence retirement accounts, pension funds, and individual investors around the world. Perhaps that is the mark of true leadership. Not creating dependence, but creating opportunity. Not making people rely on you forever, but giving them the tools to succeed on their own. That was Jack Bogle's greatest gift. He did not promise shortcuts. He offered principles. And principles, when followed with patience, have a remarkable ability to endure across generations. Jack Bogle reminded us that life itself rewards many of the same qualities that build wealth. Patience instead of haste, consistency instead of intensity, humility instead of ego, and faith in the future instead of fear of the present. His greatest achievement wasn't simply changing how people invested. It was helping millions of ordinary people believe that financial freedom was within their reach. Jack Bogle, the man who proved you don't have to beat the market. Part 5. The Timeless Lesson. Chapter 17. Success is often quiet. We live in a world that celebrates noise. The loudest opinions receive the most attention. The boldest predictions become headlines. The fastest-growing stocks dominate conversations. It is easy to believe that success must always be exciting. Jack Bogle quietly challenged that belief. He reminded us that the greatest achievements are often built in silence. A family consistently saving for retirement. A young worker investing a small amount every month. Parents building a future for their children. A retiree protecting decades of hard work. These stories rarely appear on television. They rarely become viral videos. Yet they represent the quiet victories that change lives. Real wealth is often invisible while it's being built. Only years later do people notice what patience has accomplished. The tree that provides shade today was planted long ago. The fortune admired today was usually built through thousands of ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. Chapter 18. The Wisdom of Humility. One of Jack Bogle's greatest qualities was humility. He understood that markets are larger than any individual. No one can predict every movement. No one wins every year. No strategy works perfectly forever. Accepting those truths is not weakness. It is wisdom. Humility allows an investor to prepare instead of pretending. It encourages diversification instead of overconfidence. It favors discipline over emotion. The humble investor does not need to prove that he is smarter than the market. He simply participates in the long-term growth of businesses around the world. Sometimes wisdom is not found in knowing more. Sometimes it is found in admitting what we cannot know. Chapter 19. The race that never needed to be won. Imagine standing at the starting line of a marathon. Around you, everyone begins sprinting. Some push ahead with incredible speed. Others shout with confidence. Some believe they have already found the fastest path. It is tempting to join them, to run faster, to chase harder, to refuse being left behind. But investing is not a sprint. It is not even a marathon. It is a lifelong journey. Those who exhaust themselves trying to stay ahead of everyone else often discover they were running the wrong race. Jack Bogle stepped away from that competition. He asked a different question. Instead of asking, "How can I beat everyone else?" he asked, "How can ordinary people reach their financial goals with the highest probability of success?" That single question changed everything. His success came not from making investing more exciting. It came from making it more dependable. Chapter 20. The Timeless Lesson. Every legendary investor teaches us something different. Jesse Livermore taught us the importance of patience and timing. Benjamin Graham taught us to seek value rather than popularity. Warren Buffett taught us to own wonderful businesses for the long term. Charlie Munger taught us to think clearly before acting. Peter Lynch taught us to observe the world around us. John Templeton taught us to remain courageous when others are fearful. Jack Bogle taught us something equally powerful: simplicity. He reminded us that investing does not have to be complicated to be successful. That lower costs matter. That patience compounds. That consistency wins. And that time remains one of the greatest allies an investor will ever have. Perhaps his greatest lesson reaches far beyond the stock market. Life itself rewards those who continue showing up, who continue learning, who continue improving, who refuse to let temporary setbacks define their future. Progress is rarely dramatic. Most meaningful achievements grow slowly, almost invisibly, until one day people call them extraordinary. Closing reflection. As we come to the end of Jack Bogle's remarkable story, we are reminded that true greatness is not always measured by how loudly someone speaks or how dramatically they change the world. Sometimes greatness is measured by how many lives become better because of a simple idea. Jack Bogle believed that ordinary people deserved extraordinary opportunities. He devoted his life to giving millions of families a fairer chance to build wealth. His legacy lives on not only through the funds he created, but through the confidence he gave to generations of investors who finally realized they did not need to predict the future to prepare for it. Perhaps that is the greatest investment lesson of all. The future belongs not to those who constantly chase the next opportunity, but to those who patiently prepare for it. If this documentary has given you a new perspective on investing, patience, and the quiet power of simplicity, I hope you'll continue this journey with us. This channel is dedicated to exploring the timeless wisdom of history's greatest investors, entrepreneurs, innovators, and thinkers, not simply to understand how they built wealth, but to understand how they built lives of lasting purpose. If you enjoyed this documentary, please consider subscribing and joining us for the next chapter in our series. Because every legend leaves behind more than success. They leave behind a lesson. And sometimes, one timeless lesson can change an entire lifetime. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next documentary.